All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're going to completely reframe how organizations actually tackle mental health. For decades, corporate wellness has relied on subjective surveys, generic wellness apps, and kind of just waiting for people to raise their hands when they're struggling. But today, we're introducing an objective, data-driven approach to wellness. We're going to look at how we can measure mental fitness with the exact same physiological rigor that we use to measure physical health.
We've got a pretty structured journey ahead today. We'll be looking at the true cost of strain, why reactive approaches fail, objective brain-based mental screening, measuring 3 core pillars, tracking mental fitness trajectories, and finally, acting before problems escalate. Let's get into it.
Section 1. The true cost of strain. Now, let's actually look at this on the balance sheet.
Globally, we are looking at a jaw-dropping $1 trillion cost and about 12 billion workdays lost every single year. But listen, I need to be incredibly explicit about something here. These staggering costs, they are caused specifically by depression and anxiety. Not just everyday stress. No, unmanaged workplace stress is merely the early pathway that eventually leads there. But once a workforce hits clinical depression and anxiety, well, that's exactly when that trillion-dollar global bill comes due.
And bringing this into focus for Singapore, we're looking at a massive 15.7 billion Singapore dollar annual cost. And just like those global figures we just talked about, this price tag is driven specifically by depression and anxiety. I mean, employees dealing with work-related strain are missing nearly 18 extra days of work a year, and 40% of them are dealing with presenteeism, being at their desks but fundamentally way less productive. Again, stress is just the starting line. It's the resulting depression and anxiety that create this incredibly expensive finish line.
Section 2. Why reactive approaches fail. So, money is literally bleeding out of organizations, but why?
Well, the data reveals a pretty massive paradox. Research from early 2026 shows that 45% of Singaporean employees now have access to counseling through their employers. Which, hey, sounds like a huge win, right? But here's the catch. 61% are still reporting burnout. Giving people access to reactive counseling doesn't actually solve the problem if we aren't accurately identifying the strain in the first place. Access to a solution means absolutely nothing if the problem is already out of control before anyone even notices.
Think about it like this. We routinely screen our physical health proactively, right? We take blood pressure tests long before a heart attack ever happens. But when it comes to the brain, we do the exact opposite. We wait for mental health to completely deteriorate into burnout, or even worse, depression and anxiety before we offer any real support. Basically, we're waiting for the car to crash instead of just checking the engine.
Moving to Section 3, objective brain-based mental screening. It's time to step away from those subjective, "Hey, how are you feeling today?" surveys. Enter the NPRO-8 Core. This is a 10-minute objective brain-based mental fitness screening tool. Now, this tech actually has robust military origins. It was originally built for high-stakes environments where knowing a team's true cognitive state isn't just a nice perk, it is absolutely essential. And what it does is pretty remarkable. In just 10 minutes, using a really simple, non-invasive headset, it grabs an objective snapshot of mental fitness to catch those early signs of strain long before they ever escalate. There's a quote here that brilliantly hits the nail on the head. "Training only works when you know exactly what needs to be improved." I mean, think about all the generic wellness apps or resilience webinars companies pay for. Honestly, generic corporate training is kind of useless if you don't know exactly what biological baselines you're trying to improve in the first place. The NPRO-8 gives us that baseline.
Section 4. Measuring 3 core pillars. So, to actually understand what needs improving, the screening breaks things down. The screening completely focuses on 3 objective pillars. We're talking stress load, recovery capacity, and functional impact. It doesn't rely on what an employee simply says they're feeling, because let's be real, highly driven professionals will tell you they are fine right up until the literal moment they completely burn out. By looking at these 3 pillars, we completely bypass the bravado and look straight at the physiology.
Let's break these down real quick. Stress load is the brain's actual physiological reaction to the stress it's experiencing. Recovery capacity is the biological ability of that brain to bounce back. Can they actually switch off at the end of the day? And functional impact measures how that stress is translating to their overall cognitive performance and day-to-day workplace functioning. So the absolute key here is that we are capturing the physical reality of the brain's reaction and its resilience.
Which brings us to Section 5. Tracking mental fitness trajectories. Because an objective snapshot is great, but it's really just the beginning.
To turn that data into a forward-looking movie, the process spans an 8-week timeline based on the MFS slides. It just takes 10 minutes, once a week. The first 3 weeks? Those are completely dedicated to familiarization and getting a true baseline measurement. Then, weeks 4 through 8 are where the real magic happens. That's 5 weeks of active intervention using neuro-targeted training built specifically for the areas that the baseline showed needed the most help.
And this is what that output actually looks like. By repeating those measurements, the dashboard turns scattered data points into a definitive trajectory. You can clearly see the trend lines for stress load, recovery capacity, and functional impact moving between green for good, amber for monitor, and red for needs attention. It objectively shows managers and employees alike if the situation is improving, staying stable, or deteriorating right toward that dangerous pathway of anxiety and depression. It completely takes the guesswork out of well-being.
Section 6. Act before problems escalate. Because ultimately, tracking these trajectories empowers organizations to act logically and decisively.
I really want to highlight this statement from the source material because it's absolutely crucial. We do not diagnose illness. Remember, this tech isn't about replacing doctors or diagnosing mental illness. It is entirely about intercepting that early pathway of unmanaged stress. It's about seeing those amber warning lights flashing on the dashboard and correcting the course before it spirals into the clinical, trillion-dollar nightmare of depression and anxiety. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one absolutely critical question. Are you measuring your team's mental fitness early and objectively, or are you kind of just waiting to pay the ultimate cost? Listen, we wouldn't run a business's finances without objective data, and we for sure shouldn't run our team's mental fitness without it either. It is time we treat mental fitness with the exact same proactive, data-driven rigor as our physical health. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today.